Hey everyone, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in to Relevant Jukebox, and today we're going to talk about the newest album from Dawson, Pixel Bath. So this is the sophomore full-length album from the singer-songwriter Dawson, whose debut album, Bad Sports, I actually missed from last year, but I did hear the single Bruise Boy that promoted this record, and I was really intrigued. It's this like dejected shoegaze anthem with these really crystallized sounding guitars that are spiraling around in the mix, and a really catchy soaring chorus. And he has a pretty wide range of influences in the worlds of like shoegaze, punk and emo, hip-hop and pop, all colliding together in like a blender of sorts. Which surprisingly, after my first run through of this record, it didn't really grab me. I thought it was just like really whiny and stylistically a little bit all over the place in spots. But for some reason, and I can't really fully explain it, I suppose, but I just kept revisiting this record over and over and over again. And each pass through, it was like there was this new filter that was passed over my ears, and eventually this thing just like clicked for me. I read an interview that Gene did promoting this record, describing the sound of it, saying that he wanted it to feel like it was the best time of your life or something. And with that in mind, his sort of left field vision of rock and pop just became a lot more clearer to me. Maybe I just had to learn the melodies first, I'm not really quite sure, which, by the way, there are some pretty viral hooks and refrains all over this thing, a lot of which bring me right back to the days of listening to a ton of emo and pop punk, which initially was just like a huge turnoff for me, but eventually, I just ended up growing to like the melodies on here. I'm not really quite sure why. But before I get into the highlights on this release, and there are a good amount of them to mention, a few of the tracks on here didn't really work for me, like the track '06 Burst, which in my opinion just sounds like a bad Yeezus ripoff of sorts and does not really fit in with the rest of this album. And I'm still not really in love with the opening track Devilish. You know, on the one hand, it kind of sounds like a mix between Your Favorite Weapon and like The Strokes or something, but there's a pretty lackluster guitar solo right in the middle of the track that kind of derails it a little bit in my opinion. But speaking of guitars on this release, I think they're pretty cool sounding. They're fiery and fuzzy and like crystallized all at the same time. Really living up to the name of the record, Pixel Bath. Tracks like Pegasus and Policia are some of the best examples. And as for the highlights on here, like I was mentioning before, there are quite a few. You have the singles Bruise Boy and Starface, which again, both like alluring anthems that ended up growing on me. There's the track Triple Double, which I kind of wish kicked the record off with its pretty immediately ear-grabbing guitar line that kicks it off, and all those vocal snippets that pop through that I think add a pretty cool dynamic. And there's this like abrupt switch up halfway through where A$AP Rocky hops onto the track and does his like best Frank Ocean impersonation. I don't know, he kind of sounds like he is, but it somehow works for me. I don't know. The following track, Shiner, has some really whacked out sounding synthesizers that I think are really cool. This one had to grow on me though, as it is a little bit more on the briefer side, but the melody that's played by those synthesizers is really ear grabbing. Dummy is a track that I kind of get like George Clanton vibes a little bit, at least on the chorus. The instrumental is a little 90s flavored as well and has just tons and tons of details layered into it that really went over my head the first time, mainly because the chorus is so catchy. Poster Child is the shortest track on the record, and yes, I do wish it was longer, but it does have one of the best crescendos towards the end that's really awesome. Clear Bones was another big highlight on here for me, and the track opens up with this bass line on it that sounds almost identical to I Bleed by the Pixies. Some of the transitions on this track can be a little bit choppy, but he does finish it extremely strong with a very playful outro jam and a refrain that is just irresistible. And there's a strong finish to the record as well with the final two cuts, with Pyrotechnics being my favorite of the two. I love the woozy instrumental on this track, but it's really Gene singing once again that makes the cut, especially towards the end where there's this like build up and a lot more emotional impact that was actually pretty moving, I thought, to close out the album with a bang. So, this one took me by surprise, honestly. I couldn't believe that I just could not put it down. And I didn't really think it was gonna catch my ears, honestly, after the first listen or two. And I will say, there are spots on here where he does recycle the same flow when he's rapping, but, he does make up for it on here with some pretty interesting instrumentals that are texturally layered and colorful. And he can really write some sticky hooks and refrains on here with some choruses that are still stuck in my head. And I really hope he decides to like stick in this lane of writing like impactful tracks that are trying to capture this moment of like lightning in a bottle feeling, because I think he does it pretty well. And if he tightens everything up on here, I mean, he's just, you know, gonna have a pretty bright future ahead of him, in my opinion. And with that being said, I'm feeling an 8 over here on Pixel Bath. Now, I headed over to Gene's website. I did not see a vinyl release, unfortunately, of this so far, but I have links down below to keep an eye out in case one pops up. And if you've listened to Pixel Bath before, what did you think about it? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and share, and if you want more content from me, hit that subscribe button. Peace.